So, welcome everyone. Before we get started, in the spirit of reconciliation, Alongside Families would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea, and community. We pay our respects to elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people joining this webinar today. Hello everyone, welcome. I'm Bree. For those who I haven't met before, I'm joining today from the lands of the Murra people on Yuin Nation. I do encourage you to share in the chat what lands you're joining from if you know. But if you are joining this webinar feeling a bit frazzled, maybe running on your third coffee, squeezing this in between school pickup and dinner prep, you're in exactly the right place. I feel it's the right place for me at the moment as well. But as we head into this final stretch of the year, so many of us are feeling it, that bone deep tiredness that doesn't shift even after a good night's sleep. The overwhelm of trying to keep all the plates spinning, school events, appointments, work deadlines, and somehow still trying to be present for our families and ourselves. So today we're talking about something really important, and the difference between that normal end of year tiredness and actual burnout, and more importantly, what we can actually do about it. So I'm excited to be joined today by Mitchell Woods. Again, we've had Mitchell a few times before and obviously love what he does, and that's why we've invited him back for a third time. But Mitchell is a registered psychologist and director of Mura Psychology, and Mitchell works with individuals and families navigating all sorts of challenges. And he brings such a warm, person-centered approach to his work. So thank you so much for being here with us again. We're excited to have you back.
Thanks for having me.
So, as I said, we're going to have a conversation for about 30 minutes and then we're going to open up to your questions in the last 15 minutes. So, if we are chatting, feel free to pop any questions in the chat as we go along and we'll try to get to as many as we can at the end. So, let's just dive in. Mitch, this time of the year can feel like a marathon for so many families. But before we dive into the practical supports, can you share what you're seeing in your work right now? And are people coming in feeling stretched thin as we get closer to the end of the year?
Yeah, I would say that's going to be a yes from me. It's not necessarily the focus of a lot of the work, but you do hear a lot of it's been a long year, can't wait to get past Christmas. Um, you do hear a lot of that, and I think there's just also a shared lived experience. Humans are attuned to each other, and you just sort of feel that energy around at this time of year.
Absolutely. And I think our kids feel it too. But
Hmm.
from your perspective, why does this season feel particularly heavy for families raising children with disability?
Yeah, so this time of year, fatigue is a factor. So making the way through uh, most of the year to get to this stage, the breaks that we sort of get in between are few and far. So we're sort of like right at the tail end of that marathon. So just that fatigue build up. I think we find that routines can start to break down a little bit as well. End of year concerts, excursions, like things just sort of start to unravel a little bit with the routines. Some sports, like kids that do sports, that might come to an end by summer, and then they're doing their summer sports. So there's a lot of routine change. Sensory demands increase. It's hard to even go to the shops this time of year. It's just so busy, loud. There's a lot of sensory overload. Um, just increased demand, planning for the holidays, um, getting ready for Christmas gifts. It's just a lot going on. So I think I could probably go on and on about all the different things that change at this
Yeah.
time of year is just fundamentally different to the rest of the year.
Yeah. I think you just pretty much named everything that I'm feeling at the moment.
Mm.
And even just around, those changes, just even going into the shops. Like for me, I live in a regional area and the increase in people that are visiting the area already and the traffic, like I'm getting so frustrated with that. And it's not even Christmas yet.
Oh yeah.
But a really common question we're hearing from parents is, how do I know if I'm just tired am I just tired or am I on my way to
Mm,
burnout? Like, what are some of those signs that we can look for?
mm. Yeah, I'd say probably the first tell is if you're tired and you have a good sleep, probably going to notice a difference. It's if you've rested and you don't feel rested, and particularly if that's becoming a bit of a theme. So morning after morning, you're waking up and you're not feeling rested, even though you've had a sleep. That's really the difference. Because if we're just tired, a good rest will make a difference for us. So that's usually the first tell. Just dysregulation, just noticing whether that's heightened dysregulation, so that real hyper arousal, very on edge, agitated, irritable, or whether it's the opposite, it's that hypo arousal, it's that really flat, checked out sort of state. So if you're sort of noticing that you're sitting at those levels, that's probably going to be a sign. I mean, it's normal for us to be in those states, but if it feels like that's happening more than usual, that's going to be a big tell. Cognitive impairment, so finding it hard to concentrate and plan things and being forgetful, brain fog, all that sort of stuff. Physical symptoms, maybe feeling headaches, tension, just feeling sick physically in your body, not feeling 100%. Avoidance, withdrawal as well can be the case. Just really shrinking your world, avoiding contact with people, um, canceling things. So things like that. Probably also loss of enjoyment just can be one as well. Because when we're dysregulated, we're not really connected into uh, our feelings of joy and love as much. So you might notice an absence of that.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I guess the parents in our community as well, like some of them are living already with that really high level of day-to-day stress. Can
Mm.
burnout show up in different or less obvious ways for those? Like when you're just constantly in that fight or flight, and that is
Mm.
your day-to-day life, how can they see what's different and what's not?
Yeah, it can definitely be different. I'd say a lot of what I've mentioned above applies. It may just take a little bit more of I would say, hypo aroused state and that autopilot, very disconnected, um, just functionally operating, but not emotionally or cognitively present. Um, Usually because if people that are used to that level of stress, perhaps that chronic stress, and they've adapted to that, um, and so they just in a way know how to be. It's sort of fundamentally changed their nervous system,
Mm,
and yeah, so you tend to find a lot more just autopilot, um, that sort of hypo aroused state because you can't be on all the time for a long period of time. Naturally, we have to sit at a lower level of intensity. So yeah, probably say more towards that hypo aroused state, just going through the motions is more common.
yeah. Okay. So I guess as well, like what we hear from families, and they talk about that slow build of fatigue, and I know that for me as well, it's not really one big thing that makes me feel tired. It's
Hmm.
all those little things that add up over time. Why does it creep in so quietly?
Yeah, I'd say to understand that, we've got to really look at what what is stress. Historically, how has that played out as humans? So historically, in an evolutionary point of view, stress was very rarely ever chronic, meant to be chronic. It was much more situational and temporary. And if you'd come across a tiger while you were hunting, um, that was usually you'd either survive or you didn't survive. And that was it. That was the stressor. Stressor resolved onto the next thing. But in present day, it's a lot different. We've got thousands of tigers that are around every corner. Some are, literal things that are happening externally, but then a lot of it's internal stresses, pressure that we put on ourselves, expectations. So we're at a place where we can hold so much ongoing stress, which has never really been the case. Our nervous system is not really designed to do that. So I think that's why it can really creep up on us because we aren't coming up against, life endangering threats daily necessarily. It's just these small incremental build up of stresses. And so I think where the burnout creeps, because stress is normal. It's a part of life. Where it sort of becomes burnout is maybe when we push through. It's this tendency to want to push through. And, I'll make this sacrifice here, and okay, I won't go on. I'll skip this break here. Starting to deny our own needs in order to push through. Just thinking, yeah, if I can just get through, if I can just get through. But sometimes what are we getting through to? Like, what is that magical day when we wake up and all that stress is resolved? That's not going to be there. So I think the burnout is just it's that chronic stress accumulation, and then we're just trying to push through and soldier on through it. And it can be really hard to notice those incremental changes and how our nervous system adapts day by day by day based on our environment. So yeah.
Yeah. And I guess as well, like again, for parents in our community, they're juggling so much more. There's therapy appointments, there's school meetings, there's behavior needs. How does that actual ongoing mental load contribute to that slow build?
Yeah, it's definitely it adds more onto it. I sort of feel this way sometimes. I see kids that are doing it all: psychology, OT, speech. They might have support worker. They might have learning support, tutor. There can be a lot going on, and sometimes it can feel like it's a lot of investment and maybe not getting the return we want from that. So yeah, so the planning and problem solving aspects, I guess parents are, always having to think ahead, appointments, implementing strategies and suggestions from the sessions, communicating with school if that's necessary, behavioral plans. There's a lot to be mindful of, for sure. The decision fatigue can be a thing, just daily decisions adding up over time. Like which therapists is this the right one for our kid? And managing schedules, working things around. I see that with the parents I work with. It's like, how do we make it all fit? So you've got this jigsaw, and we can't do this day at this time, and there's just so much mental gymnastics going on. And just yeah, so there's a lot that just goes into that aspect of planning,
Yeah.
organizing, making sure everything fits, and certainly the emotional labor of a lot of this stuff too. When you're supporting a child that maybe has some uh, dysregulation concerns, you're going to be sharing in that as well. As I said, humans where we co-regulate. So parents maybe that do have kids that maybe have some dysregulation um, challenges, they're going to be feeling that as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely there's a lot that involved with
Absolutely.
that.
And I love that you just referred to it as mental gymnastics. I feel
Yeah.
like I get guilty if I don't do anything for myself or any exercise, but from now on, I'm going to say, no, I did mental gymnastics today.
Yeah.
Which moves me on to that. Let's talk about guilt. Like, it comes up so often for families. Guilt that we're resting, guilty that, that we're saying
Mm.
no to something, guilty for needing time alone.
Mm.
Why is guilt so common for parents?
Yeah, I'd say guilt. It's common. It's a very adaptive experience. It definitely motivates us into acting, but it can. There's got to be a line somewhere with guilt. So it's just about finding, what that is. But as a parent, there's always going to be a high sense of responsibility I don't know that if we got rid of that, then that would do more harm than good. So there's always got to be that. But that certainly can make parents more susceptible to feel guilty, um, cultural, social expectations, even just around parental roles. So we talk about parents as a single category, but there can be differences in expectations on a father compared to a mother as well. So definitely expectations can play into that. Internalized pressure. And so, we're all our own worst critic. I would say that probably goes up to a whole other level as a parent. I wouldn't quite know just yet, but I could imagine that inner critic really come to life more. Um, yeah, fear of consequences. So if I don't do this, if I miss this, what's going to happen? Am I going to do more harm than good? Yeah, so it can sort of feel risky to rest, to stop. Your nervous system doesn't want you to stop. Um, that's what it's designed to do. So it can feel scary to stop and rest. Um, yeah,
Yeah. And as much as our nervous system doesn't want us to stop, we need to. So
we
when
do.
life feels really full, what might it look like for parents out there to meet their own needs in small and realistic ways? Like things that don't add more pressure or become another task on the to-do list.
Yeah, I think um, just calling it for what it is, naming it, which is what we're doing today. We're talking about it. Um, Probably a lot of the issue is that we're not even really stopping and recognizing it for what it is, just soldiering on. So just being able to do that and then giving yourself an opportunity to shift things. So if you recognize, okay, I'm feeling really dysregulated right now. Um, what could I do that might support my regulation? So having a bit of a nervous system reset. It um, doesn't have to take up a lot of time. Like 5 minutes can make a big difference, even less than 5 minutes. So yeah, if we feel like we're really stuck in that dysregulation, it's just finding those windows to have a bit of a reset, whether that's doing some regulated breathing, maybe just moving your body, stretching, walking, um, doing controlled explosions, I like to call them, which would be a bit more intense externalization. So running, it's sort of not exercising for the sake of exercising, but just more getting that energy out, running on the spot. You could, scream into a pillow, punch a pillow. These real controlled externalizations. Um, Doing body scans, guided mindfulness. There's heaps of things we can do that can influence our nervous system. We just need to tap into that. Thing is 99.99% of the time we're tapping into the sources of the stress, which are just giving us more feedback to that nervous system, whereas just need those little windows of break time. um, you don't have to do new things. Just think about what works for you. Is just having a cup of tea, sitting outside for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and just really being present. So it's not about what we're doing; it's how we're doing it. Because people will say, "Oh, well, I go for a walk, have a cup of tea," and then we talk more about it when they're doing those things mentally. They're not there. They're thinking about things that are coming up tomorrow. It's more about how you are in those moments rather than what you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah, you can see how, like, if you can have even a 3-minute mindfulness track to listen to and
Mm,
actually fully focus on that, as opposed to a 30-minute walk where you're on the phone managing appointments, running through what you've got to do the
mm.
next day. Probably the 3 minutes is better than the 30 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. So it's very simple in theory, but it's hard to execute because, as I'm saying, the nervous system, it doesn't want to be distracted. It's in that state because you don't feel safe for one reason or another, and it wants that to be resolved. So sometimes we have to force that. We have to switch channels, and really, even if it is for 3 minutes, it can make a difference. And really noticing that difference, tuning into what's different for me right now that I've done that 3 minute break. whether it's mindfulness or whatever it is. Tuning into what are those signs? What tells me that I'm more regulated in that moment? And it can be short lived. 5 minutes later, you might feel the same as you did before, but that's not really what the point is. It's just about giving you those windows to reset.
Yeah, amazing. Gonna have to give that a go, I
Mm.
think. I want to sort of change pace a little bit now and just talk about, managing expectations and setting boundaries. And we've actually already had a comment in the chat around this. So hopefully the next few questions answer that
Mm.
question, but we'll come back to that afterwards anyway. But end of year events can bring a lot of pressure um, to do everything, to keep everyone happy. How can parents figure out what is truly right for their family and set boundaries that protect their child's well-being and their own without feeling guilty?
Question. Yeah. So I haven't really mentioned too much about boundaries yet because I knew that's something we would get into. But yeah, just figuring out what's right for your family. Obviously, that's half the battle, and then acting on that is the second half. But yeah, just starting with what's my capacity, like really assessing. Um, as I said, just stopping and checking in with yourself can be regulating to just to validate and give yourself that time and space. So even just really sitting and asking yourself, for example, if out of 100%, where am I sitting right now in terms of my capacity, my best capacity? Um, and just having a real honest look at that. And you can do the same for your kids or with your kids. You can sort of ask yourself where you think they would be, or you can have them do similar things like that. I do the like a visual battery for kids. It's like an actual, and they'll just color it in to show how charged up they feel. Um, yeah, and sometimes it's quite drained, and that's not necessarily something they might communicate that way unless they could do that visually. So just really assessing where's our capacity and then making decisions based on that information. So, and it doesn't have to be a yes or no, sort of black or white, yes or no to things. It could be, all right, well, I'm sitting around 40% at the moment. Maybe I can say, yes, I can pop in for 1 hour to that event. So it doesn't have to be black or white, yes or no. You can sort of, there's a bit more gray area than that.
Yeah.
Another thing is maybe noticing the motive of why you might be saying yes. Is it because you feel that you have to say yes? Is it because of the perceived consequence of saying no? And just that's a good opportunity to reflect on that as well, because that could tell you a bit about yourself. And then some strategies, I guess, uh, with that is if you do notice maybe something about yourself there, you can always reframe. Yeah, you could ask yourself, have I had people not attend my events before? And what was that like for me? Did that change how I felt about that person? Did it affect the relationship? Chances are probably no. Decatastrophizing as well. You can say, all right, well, if I say no to this event and I feel guilty, how will I feel about that 1 month from now? How will I feel about that 1 year from now? Will that even bother me? So things like this. And then also accepting the reality that you can't control other people's feelings. If you say no and that is disappointing to them, then that's okay. They're allowed to be disappointed. It probably tells you that they care about you and they want you there. It's a sign of a healthy um, relationship. So just accepting that sometimes um, the things like this are out of our control, but we're allowed to feel guilty and say no.
Yeah. You did mention that sometimes it's not all about saying no. It might be asking about those small
Mm.
changes. So whether you do go to something just for an hour or not. But sometimes those small changes might also be about things that work better for our children, and that might be their sensory, emotional, physical needs. What might it look like for parents and carers to ask for modifications, like a quiet space, maybe a shorter visit, meeting at
Mm.
a time of day that works better
Yeah,
for the child?
yeah, yeah, definitely. There's room for flexibility. Like most events, there should be a bit of room for flexibility. So quieter spaces, as you mentioned, shorter visits, maybe having some say over the time of day are all things that you'd mentioned. Bringing sensory equipment. It's always good to have a bit of a go box in the car. So, because you never know, you might think, okay, yeah, we're feeling good, we're all in capacity, we're going to an event, and we get there and things change. So just always having something in the car, bit of a sensory go box, is always helpful. Um, yeah, so things like that, extra transition times can sort of be helpful because we that's probably one of the things that we miss in terms of how difficult transitions can be. For events, it's sometimes it's like you just straight in, you're straight out. So maybe it could be just having some routines around uh, transitions as well. What I mean by that is maybe on the way to the event, there's particular uh, activity in the car that they'd like to do. I spot it, or listen to certain music, and just really sort of creating those soft before and after launch and landing pads can be helpful. But I think those ones you mentioned in the question are always the way to go. Just having that quiet space, having that time flexibility, making sure that you've got that autonomy to leave when needed.
Yeah. And I think for me as well, like it's about the planning. So sometimes I'll call ahead if we're going to something and find out as much
Mm,
information as I can. We have a backup
mm,
plan, particularly my son has a physical disability and he can tire really easily. So what's going to happen to my daughter? Does she get dragged away from that event when she's with all her cousins and family? No, we'll divide and conquer, or she
mm.
can stay with an auntie. So we put in all those kind of things as well for the sibling.
Yeah.
Mm. But sometimes it is hard to stay confident in these decisions, especially when others might not fully understand your child's needs. So, what would you say to those parents that, have made these decisions to maybe not go to an event, or, ask for some changes because, their child does have some needs? How do we stay
Mm.
confident in those decisions and not feel bad about it?
Yeah. I'll probably answer that first with saying, obviously, we want to feel as confident as possible with these things and to really own our needs and communicate them assertively. But at the same time, it's okay to feel bad and still meet your needs. It's okay to feel guilty and say no. Um, but I think if we do need that reassurance, just that validation that we we are, you know, we are in the driver's seat for these things. It's that you know your child best, you know them better than anyone. I always say that to parents when I meet them for the first time, is that you're the expert in your child. My expertise is in psychology, but not your child. So you do know your child best, and that your decisions are always informed, not impulsive. Um, Coming back to as well your values as a parent and what's your role here. Is to support your child and their well-being, and sometimes that might mean making decisions that carry some unpleasantness and that other people might not like or agree with, but just keep bringing yourself back to what is my what is my value here, what is my role as a parent. Using simple, consistent language to explain decisions, which I think we'll come to a bit more later, is maybe just some ways you can say no.
I think that's
And
pretty much the
again,
next question.
acceptance.
Like
Yeah,
that
I
is the
think
next. We
so.
may as well just go straight into it. But like, yeah,
We
how
get
can
straight to
parents
it.
say no in a kind, clear way that keeps relationships strong?
Yeah, so keep it simple and honest. Yeah, something as simple as thanks a lot. We can't make it this time. You don't have to explain why. If they ask why, that's not necessarily your obligation to go into much more than that, other than it's just what my family needs at the moment. We've got other priorities at the moment, so you can keep it vague, just nice and simple. If we try and get too specific, we just invite challenge. Oh, can't you do this instead? Or how about so just not giving them anything to that they can throw back. Affirming the relationship can be important. We really appreciate you thinking of us. It's always helpful to throw that in there, but doesn't matter sometimes what you say. If they're going to perceive that as disappointed, you can't control that, you know. Um, Even just giving some values based reasons as well can be helpful. So because then that can speak to a more recurrent theme. So you could say something like, yeah, we're keeping things low key for our child this year. You could even say this year. And that way it sort of sets a bit of an expectation the next time they ask, um, that that may still be the case. So it's not like you're saying no each individual time. So yeah, we're going to keep low key going forward with our family. So things like that, offering alternatives as well, helpful. You know, could we catch up another day? Maybe we could come for a shorter amount of time. Yeah, but just finding those sort of templates that work for you, and you can almost just it's almost like detaching from that. It just becomes a script then, and it becomes so much easier to just say it when you've rehearsed it again and again and again.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so guilty of saying yes before thinking things through. And I do remember another parent said to me, I don't know if it was in a workshop or a webinar or something, and they said to just say, can I get back to you before saying yes? And I
Mm,
feel like when I do that now, it actually gives me the time to go away and go, actually,
mm,
can we do this? Is this going to work? And then I can politely decline. And usually it's via text or, and it's just not as
mm.
confrontational, but I'm able to sort of say what I want in a nice way. But yeah, that's definitely worked
Yeah.
for me because I do say yes before thinking it through. And then I'm like, how am I going to do that?
Mm,
But yeah, I like those little gentle scripts and just those simple phrases. But yeah, keeping it easy, like not this time,
mm.
without closing those doors. Um,
Yeah.
Now, like we're sort of coming to the end, but I want to come back to this because I know that there are families that are watching today who are not just tired. Some of them feel at the edge and feel like they cannot keep on going. We've already seen comments lately saying like, my cup's overflowing and I can't go on like this, or I feel stretched to the maximum. For parents who feel this way, where can they turn to for support? And what is the very first step someone can take when everything feels completely overwhelming?
Mm. Yeah. The very first step is to notice it. And in that way we can support ourselves is just recognizing it. As I said, that's a majority of the problem is that we just push on. We don't really even stop to really notice where we're at and where we're heading. And then once you've noticed, it's about, okay, what supports do I already have access to? We don't need to reinvent the wheel. So do you already have a GP that you trust, family or friends that are safe people, uh, psychologist? You know, it's what's accessible to you in the moment. If you've drawn on that, maybe it still feels like it needs to and like a bit more support from there. That's where you can engage with psychologist if you don't have one, um, and things like that.
Yeah. Um, and I know like, and this might be so heavy for some people to hear, but if there's someone right now that is just completely overwhelmed, like what immediate supports can they reach out for today? Things that are actually
Mm.
accessible, but realistic and available to them now without long
Mm.
wait times.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's some of that stuff, even if you do have a GP, it could take you a week or two to get in and even see them. And then if they refer you to a psychologist, that could be another month away from, and especially this time of year, it's difficult. So this is where helplines come in. I do have a list, which I'll share, just with yeah, it's got parent specific helplines, but it's also got things like Lifeline, which is just a bit more general counselling support. But they're always available, so just easy access, at least while you're waiting to uh, sort of engage with maybe some other support. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
can I can send them that through that list.
Yeah, and we'll be sure to email that out to everyone. Just quickly before we move into the audience questions, because we do have a couple, is there one message of assurance, sorry, can't speak today, too tired, or encouragement that you would like parents to hold on to as they move through the rest of the year?
Mm. Yeah. Probably that, you don't need to have all the answers right now. The best thing you can do is to be curious about your nervous system, essentially, just really tuning into it, because when we're under chronic stress and we're burning out, our nervous system is driving us. Okay, we're not really behind the wheel anymore. So just really creating that relationship with your nervous system, and the answers will come along the way. The more you learn about yourself, the more that you can proactively prevent or stave off things like burnout. So yeah, and say that yeah, you don't have to solve it all right now, but there's definitely a path.
Yeah. We do have a question that's come through the Q&A box, and it's just around if you have any advice for heading from a high intensity period into a period where support's shut down and the lack of structure and excitement can lead to big emotions without much support.
Mm. Yeah, so I might just read that in my head as well. High end. Okay, so does it sound like perhaps heading into a period where therapies and whatnot are not active? That's sort of the what the question is. Oh, it's just disappeared from my screen, the question. Says
And
no.
I think as well, maybe they might be around support workers not being available, people taking time off.
Yeah,
So you've got
time
these
off.
kind of
Yeah.
structures in place, and then all of a
Mm.
sudden over this Christmas New Year period that they go away, right?
Yeah,
Even school
it
support
does.
and all that structure,
Yeah.
that can lead to those really big emotions. So do you have any advice for
Mm.
heading into that period?
Yeah, yeah. So heading into that period, it's hard because, you can sort of ready yourself to weather the storm as best as possible. It is difficult. I take some time off this time of year, and I imagine a lot of other supports do the same. So it can be a bit of a blind spot. So yeah, it's going to be very context specific as to what what is that period going to look like for your family? Are you guys going on holidays, or are we staying grounded? It's obviously up to each family to decide that. Um, in some ways, going out and having a holiday and being distracted can be helpful, but then it comes with its challenges as well. So, yeah, I think if we are without that support, accessing those phone lines, which I'll send through, they're always open and available. Reaching out to community support like Belongside. So I think you guys, I imagine, would have parental community chat groups and things like that, just reaching out to other families. Again, it's coming back to what do I have access to right now? It's not everything I want to have access to, but is it is it enough to be meaningful to me? Um, yeah, that's the best I can answer that question. It is really hard because you can't really supplement all of that support. That's just leaning onto what remains.
Yeah. And the question we did have in the chat earlier was just, I think we've kind of covered it, but a parent was saying, for me, December is a lot of fear of failing people around me, my son and my family, around gifts, celebrations, food, planning for school next year, the holidays, meeting people's expectations. How do we say no to things without making people feel uncared for? And it's
Mhm.
tricky, but
Yeah,
I think
it is. Yeah, I think we sort of touched on that in in the webinar. It's something that we could touch on it 1,000 times, and it doesn't make it any less difficult. Um, I would say my answer to that would be similar to how I answered during the webinar, which is our goal doesn't need to be to make people feel a certain way. Yes, if we can, it's ideal. But at the same time, it doesn't. You could spend all your time constructing this perfect script to deliver to someone, and they might still feel disappointed and maybe even uncared for. And that might be more to do with them and their stuff than it does for you. You don't have to shield everyone. Um, so I think we can do the best we can with some of the what we've mentioned in the webinar in terms of affirming the relationship, offering alternatives, keeping it nice and simple, and owning it. Like, this is my decision and I'm making it for me and my family. It's not about them. Doing all of that can obviously help, but there's still no guarantee that they won't feel um, uncared for, and that might just be their stuff as well. Mm.
Yeah, it's tricky. It's tricky. I am
Mm.
mindful of the time, and we're very close to the end of our webinar. So there were a few other questions that came through, but I might just pop them to you in an email and see if we can get the answers out in the resources afterwards, because one of them was around resources. Um, but yes, thank you, Mitchell. Thank you so much for being here today. And for those
Yep.
questions that have come through the chat and the Q&A box. I really hope this conversation has given you some practical tools and maybe more importantly, some permission to take care of yourself as we head into this busy season. Um, Mitchell, thanks for sharing your time, your expertise with us today. If anyone would like to connect with Mitchell or learn more about Mura Psychology, we'll pop the details in the email as well. You will receive an email with a link to today's session recording, the additional resources that Mitchell's mentioned, his contact information, and ways to connect with alongside families and continue the conversation. Whilst we are coming to the end of the year and a lot of our events are wrapping up, we are still running virtual My Time all the way up till the 17th of December. We're going to take a short break over the Christmas period, but we are going to bring My Time back earlier. We're not going to wait till term one. We're going to bring it back mid-January because we just know how much parents need that connection. So keep an eye on your inboxes for our newsletter, which will have the dates. And again, as Mitchell said, we do actually have the Belongside community. So whilst we do have a shutdown period, that still will be monitored. There still will be a space for you to connect with other families, let them know that what's happening in your life, share resources. So that's there as well. But yeah, make sure you keep an eye out for our emails. And before you rush off to the next thing on your to-do list, I am going to pop a feedback form in the chat. So if you'd like to provide any feedback on today's session, we love hearing it. But yeah, I also just want to say, please be kind to yourself. Notice the signs, make those small changes, ask for help. You deserve not just to survive the end of the year, but to move through it with a bit more ease. So Mitchell, great having you again. Thank you, everyone. Take care of yourselves, and we will see you all next time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Bree.
Thanks.
Thank you.